Welcome once again to another awesome episode of the FLAMA podcast, the ultimate guide to the gaming industry. I am your host, Angel. Very happy to be here with you. And today we're doing something a little bit different. We are going international. We're going to the UK, and we have an awesome mentor slash guest, Emma. Welcome to the show. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Emma, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I really appreciate you having me on the show.
Of course, super grateful to have you. Well, Emma, as you may know, usually in the first half of the show, we like to humanize our mentor. We like to ask questions like, how did you get into the gaming industry? Why do you like games? What made you start being interested in them? So let's go back to your origin point. Like, tell me, how did you start liking games, playing games? Like, tell me about it.
So I got into games when I was about probably 5 years old. I was playing, the first game I remember playing was Sonic on the Sega Mega Drive. But sadly, we only had that for a really short amount of time because my auntie worked at Philips, and Philips brought out the CDI. And I think that, I could be wrong, but I think it was the first time that games came out on a CD-ROM. Considering that that was like early 90s, like probably 94, 95. And even in 99 at school, we still had floppy disks for games on, not CDs, not in the CD drive. So I was like, it came very early on. The games at the time I thought were amazing, but looking back at them now, they were literally static images and like real simple concepts. And one of these games I looked back on a while ago, I thought it was like hyper sci-fi, really cool. And when I looked at it, it was just literally static images, and then you click left or right, and then it gave you another image, and then it just put sound on it. And it was at the time really immersive. But looking back, it's just such a simple concept that portrayed what's happening in the game. So yeah, CDI, and then I moved on to probably PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, I went to Xbox 360, and then in between we had the Game Boy Advance. I had a Game Boy Pocket, like a grey, black and white, and I had like Pokemon on it. That's when I was a kid, and I still got them. I still got both of those.
How do you translate those desires of, I want to be creative, I want to learn how to draw, into your company, into making products?
So again, it comes back to this whole like talking with friends and creating things with friends early on, like as a teenager, and just having these jokes. And my friend at the time, we were really into like positive motivational things, because I was a really shy child, like to the point I wouldn't speak to anybody. And when I got to the age of 18, I had to go to university. I had to stand up and I had to give presentations on the work that I was doing. So I did a lot of like confidence boosting. I read a lot of personal development books, to the point that, I was reading Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And I read the book Yes Man, and I ended up writing a list of everything that I needed to say yes to, all the stupid things I was scared of, like making phone calls to people who I didn't know, and getting on the motorway and driving somewhere I didn't know, and all the things that I thought I'm just terrified of these things. And I just said, I'm going to do this every week. I'm going to set something that I hate doing or I fear doing on a list, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to say yes to it. And I did that to the point that the biggest crowd that I gave a talk to was probably 100 product design students. So going from being scared to talk in front of my class, to being able to talk professionally in front of 100 students was a massive journey for me in building that development. So me and my friend were into personal development, and she was looking for a book, or not a book. She was looking for a tape which was like 365 days of personal power, and she thought, okay, this is what I want. I want something that's going to give me a nugget of inspiration every day that makes me feel great. And then in 365 days, I'm going to be a completely different person. And when she got it, it was a Tony Robbins 2-hour seminar on personal power and changing your mindset. And she was like, that's not what I wanted. So then I was like, well, I can make you something that's got 365 days of things that's going to be positive. And then I found that very tricky, so I made it quite funny. And obviously, being friends with people, you just come up with these little jokes and like, oh yeah, you could do this today, and you could do that, and it's like today you're a lion, roar at people. So that's where the character came from. Like, you kind of putting yourself outside your comfort zone for 365 days, or doing positive things that boost your morale or your self-esteem and make you have a really wonderful life for a year, and realize that you can do things that are bigger than yourself. And then so that then translated. So someone read my book. They read my book and went, I've been being a pirate for 20 minutes and it's driving me insane. So then we went, great idea for a drinking game. So we stripped the book of all these characters and we put them into a card game. Actually, I got it on my desk here. So I made a game called Cards of Character.
Okay.
I don't have my other games on my desk actually, but so I made Cards of Character, and that's the drinking game. I did a Kickstarter campaign. I was 23 years old. I knew nothing about business. I knew nothing about Kickstarter. It was the really early days of, some people knew about it, a lot of people didn't know about it. And at that point in time, the rule of Kickstarter was you create your project, but you have to educate people about what Kickstarter actually is. Gotcha. And then get them to sign up to Kickstarter. So like, you know, nowadays when people go, oh, I'm doing a Kickstarter campaign, a lot of people have accounts because it's been going for such a long time now. But back then it was, you literally have to convince them to sign up and make the account so then they can back your project. And it was a little bit different as well, because you could put a project up. There were so few projects on there that you could search and find something and go, oh, that's unique, I'll back that project. Or, you know, just finding the weird and cool, amazing things that people were making and just get behind them. And it would be something you'd never seen before. But nowadays it's so commercial that it's used in everybody's product market strategy to get the funding that they need. And then you're now competing against a lot more people to try and fund a project. I know I'm going off on a tangent on a lot of these things, but it kind of all bounces off one another. In sort of my history anyway.
Yeah, 100%. I really like the idea of you kind of like helping a friend, making something for your friend, and then having that turn into mechanics for a game. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, which is something really admirable, you mentioned that you were very shy, but then you gave a talk in front of 100 product design students. That's very cool.
But we're talking years later. We're talking like, I mean, I was 27 or 28 when I gave the talk in front of 100 people. So it's 10 years after me doing all the personal development stuff from the age of 18, where I was really, really shy and wouldn't speak to anybody.
Yeah, that's awesome, though. I love that. I respect that. Speaking of product design, I have seen your products. I have seen Quirk. I have seen your games on Steam. They look awesome.
Thank you.
I feel like you're great at product design.
Yeah.
Yeah, to talk to me about product design. What is product design?
So, I mean, there's different terms for product design now, because, I mean, I look at jobs now and product design is now software design rather than physical products. But for me, product design is designing products that are usable for a customer, and being able to communicate something to a customer that they need, and being able to build that around their specific needs. So, I mean, I could probably build, I want to say pretty much anything, if I've got the passion and the inspiration to go ahead and do that thing. And so, like, I don't have to just make games, though games is my passion and it's something I've been chasing for a really long time. But I could go sit in a tech company and they could put a project in front of me, and as long as I'm working with a team of skilled people, I could help build that product, as well as like physical products like card games, or just really just inventing things, which sometimes I get ideas for things and we've just got a 3D printer, and I'm now like, what could I build? What could I prototype? And you know, and you can get Arduino boards, and you can program all different types of functionality. So I'm like thinking maybe I could actually do a toy design now, because I've got the materials to be able to design, and I can get the electronics off of Amazon or somewhere and just build something really cool. But yeah, for me, product design is like really physical product that you can actually, it's tangible, you can hold it in your hand, and it does something functional that you need, but is also very usable for the customer.
Gotcha. Okay. So when you start your product design journey, let's say with a team, do you have like a series of steps that you go through? Okay, first we do this, second we do that. Like, what's your method?
So really for product design, for me, I can only really talk about Quirk because I've got like a very natural style of developing. And I would say it's natural, but it has come from working in tech and working on projects that have been successful in B2B and B2C. If people don't know, that's business to business and business to consumer.
Mm.
I mainly work in business to consumer, especially with games. I would say business to consumer is one of the hardest places to work in product development because you need to be able to reach your desired customer and create like that mass want for that product, so that especially when you've got very little funding and you're trying to make something and make it viable, you need to be able to get in front of the right people and produce something that you know will sell. Or if you're going to get a loan in order to help you to develop, you've got to know that there's sales at the end of that process. Otherwise, you're just throwing money away. So I've got some steps. Shall I go through the steps first?
Sure.
And then we can talk through each of those points.
Sounds good
so
to
the
me.
first step, like especially let's talk games because that's where we are now. The first step for games is that spark of inspiration. So that's like step number one. That's the idea. And I'm going through this now with building video games because I feel like with developing the card game, I've just told you my story of how I developed that. And if people don't know, we've sold 18,000 copies of Quirk, and it's licensed to Gibsons in the UK. So we've got roughly a player base of like 72,000 people if you count that one person buys it and then 4 people play it or 3 people play it. So the player experience of that game is much bigger than the sales volume. So with the idea for Quirk, for example, that came from one inspiration of a need from my friends saying I want something that wasn't available. And then that developed into a drinking game that then 5 years later developed into Quirk because we redesigned it all and then we went out and tested it. If you're coming up with a completely brand new idea like I am right now with video games, essentially we're taking the Quirk brand, we've got a whole load of characters in this game, and we're developing it into like a world of characters, and we're developing the story around it and the mechanics that you'd play. So again, it's not quite a 100% unique new idea. It's not like I'm going, okay, I went to a whiteboard and I've come up with like 2 different ideas and I'm going to bind them together and it's going to be this plus this. And now I'm going to go out and develop this completely new idea. All of my ideas come from something that has been before. So the platformer, I'm making a 3D platformer with my characters, the Mischief Monster, and the rest of the Quirk characters. They've got a little bit of a story behind them already, and it helps just to build out what kind of game I would build and make. So that the number one is a spark of an idea. So that's either you go to a whiteboard and coming up with an idea that you find fascinating with friends or something that you would want to make yourself, or it's coming from somewhere where there's been a need beforehand, and then you're going to go off and try and make something similar to that with some adaptations on them. But there's always, I say spark of inspiration, because sometimes you can have an idea but not be 100% fully passionate about it. And I think if you don't have that passion behind it, it's very difficult to pursue that for a long period of time, especially when it's a games project and there's this development cycle that can take years. So you really need to get an idea that is an inspiration that allows you to develop and grow your skill set whilst also being quite playful in that process. Step 2 is gauging interest with the idea. I said I'm going to go break them down first. So number 1's a spark of inspiration. Number 2 is gauging interest to find out like I said before, if you're going to put a lot of money into it, you've got to make sure you're going to make sales at the end. Step 3 is set expectations for your desired outcome, which is mainly like how you feel you want your project to come across to your customers, or how do you want to make your customers feel. It's a really, like, I'm going to call it a squiggly one, because it's more of like, what you want to create and how you want to make people feel, but it's not really tangible until you get to the end of the product development cycle. So number 3 is setting your expectations for your desired outcome. What do you want to see, and how do you want to make your customers feel? Step 4 is actually making something. And this is what is known as developing an MVP, which is a minimum viable product. And then you do that as quickly and cheaply as possible to get to the first desired outcome. And you do that by step 5. And I've got step 5A and step 5B. So step 5A is test and iterate. So you're taking that really small, quick idea, you haven't spent much money on it at all, and you're going and testing it. And you're repeating that process, and you're iterating on that design. And obviously, iteration is changing every step based on the feedback that you're getting, just in case people don't know the word iterate, because it's used quite a lot in product design, or a lot in game design, iterating and implementing those ideas that come from testing. And then 5B is continuously checking your results against your expectation goals. So that's those goals that you set in your head of how you want your customers to feel, and whether your testing is aligning with those expectation goals. Then step 6 is your product should be ready for your early adopters. And this might mean that you've got maybe the bare bones of something that you've made. It works in the market. People really like it. They're enjoying it. They're giving you positive feedback. There's probably more that you could do. You could add more features and do more with it. But right now, this works for those very early adopters. You're making money, right? You're making the money back. After that phase, you can go back to the top of the cycle and go, now we've made some money, we've got a bit more budget, we can now focus on adding this feature or that feature, and then you can make that into something that becomes a mass love product. So I've kind of gone through them quite quickly and explained them all, but if you want to go in depth with any of the steps.
Emma, so for the first one, you mentioned a spark of inspiration. How do you get that idea? Like, is it something that pops into your head, or does it come through inspiration from watching multiple things and combining them in your head? How do you get that idea?
Yeah, so I think a lot of ideas, they can come from anywhere, ideas. So there's a saying in like product development, and not just in product development, in entrepreneurship, that ideas aren't worth anything, because it's the execution of the idea that's worth something. And the execution is the hardest part. But a spark of inspiration or finding the idea can come from anywhere. It can be you're playing your favorite game and you're like, I wish this was a potato instead of this human character, and I want to make a game about potatoes. Like, if you really love potatoes and you're going to make a potato game, go ahead and do that.
Right.
I know people that probably have. There's some really nice games that are made about potatoes, and very educational games as well. So yeah, it can come from anywhere. It mainly from like things that you love in your natural progression in life, in your journey.
I heard that usually ideas or things that are creative don't necessarily come from nothing. Like, nothing comes from nothing. Usually something comes from something, right?
Yeah.
Getting that spark of inspiration is very important. When it comes to the next one, gauging interest. So let's say, okay, you got your inspiration. Let's say you watched, I don't know, some movies, you played some games. Okay, I have a new idea. You got the idea. How do you gauge interest? Do you do some market research? Do you go around and ask your friends? Do you do a poll on LinkedIn? Like, how do you do that?
So I would start with the most easiest method you have in front of you. What we want to do at this point, you've got this idea, but you don't want to really throw all of your hard-earned cash at it and then end up in debt because it doesn't really go anywhere. What you want to do is go, I've got this fantastic idea, and go somewhere where it's safe, first of all, whether that's family and friends. It's a bit of a skew-if kind of way of going about it, because sometimes your friends and family can be all like, yeah, that's a great idea. And you want to be able to sort of sort of temper those ideas and or those people, and know whether they're giving you critical feedback or not, or constructive feedback. But you go to a friend or a family member, somewhere you feel safe, and say, I've got this fantastic idea for this product, idea, game, whatever, and you just express it to them, and all these things. And I've done this with my game. Like, I want to make this 3D platformer, and I want to make it Spyro X Kirby game. So you've got this character that runs around that can absorb other characters' abilities. So it's sort of similar to Kirby, because Kirby can take on enemies' abilities and turn into different things. But set in the world like Spyro, where you can go into all these different levels and have a collectathon basically, but you're playing with these really cool mechanics because you can adapt and just, you know, find these abilities. So I'd spoken about that. I've spoken about like the stories behind Quirk and things with friends and acquaintances and anyone that basically will listen. And the response I'm getting back from it is like, that sounds like a really cool idea. That sounds like a really cool idea. So I'm building on that, and then going into like the next stage of actually, that's, you know, I go to step 4 and I'll start making something. I've already got my expectations that I want the players to feel, but I will then go and make something, and then I'll go back and test that. So the back to gauging interest is not really about the making part. It is about the talking about and expressing that idea with other people and getting the feedback early, just in terms of a sentence. Like, I've got an idea for this, what do you think? And then take it with a pinch of salt. Some people might not be the target audience anyway. If I said, Mum, I'm making a 3D platformer game, she'll go, what's a 3D platformer? It won't make any sense to her. But if I tell her the story behind it and like the way the mechanics would work, she'll probably get a better idea. And it's, so talk to those sort of people. And then like with me, when I said it, I network. So I then end up meeting people. I'm like, I got this idea for a game. It's to do this, X, Y, and Z. And I'm meeting people in games, and I'm talking to people in games and saying, yeah, what, I've got this idea to do this. And I even like prototype very quickly, gone to the making stage, and then got people to play the game with one of the mechanics in it. So it's very like, just talk about it, just gauge the interest that's around that idea, and then you'll know if it's worth pursuing. And if it's worth pursuing, you then move on to step 3 and step 4.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect. So, okay, let's see. You have your idea. You did your research. Okay, there's interest. There's definitely a want in the market for sure. How do you set expectations, or how do you let's say like use SMART goals? Like, okay, you have this idea. How do you execute it? Would be my
So those SMART goals that the way that I look at it when I talk about expectations for projects is in how do you want the player to feel? How do you want the customer to feel when they play your game? And that's, so I say it's a bit wishy-washy, because for me it's a feeling in my body. Like, I go into that sort of and visualize it, and I go and think, okay, if this game existed in the way that I can see it in my head at the moment, I'm closing my eyes because I'm visualizing it as well right now. How would I want someone to feel? Like, I want them to laugh. Like, that's what I want from my games. I want you to be laughing so hard at this just silly mechanics that you have in this game, and that you have a pathway that you can go in and follow the story and everything, or you could just run around and play with these funny mechanics and just laugh and do your own thing. And I think for me, that's my expectation goal. I want to get across an idea of, it's a really funny game to play. And then when I get to make that game, and so I'll go back, I'm going now into steps 4, 5A and 5B, which is I make it and I show it to someone, so that's testing it, and I get their feedback. If it's not that expectation goal, oh, that's so funny, I can run around and do this, then I have to go back and change something so that I can meet that expectation goal, and then go test it again and see if I'm getting that expectation goal that I want to make them really laugh. So it's just trial and error through those sort of 3 steps.
Gotcha. So you don't necessarily, so how you define success is if your expectations of people playing and laughing and having fun matches when the game comes out.
Not when the game comes out, in the testing phase, because if it's not hitting in the testing phase, I'm not going to reach it in the product stage.
Gotcha. In the testing, sorry. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
And it is really just a feeling. So, for example, when I created Quirk, or not even Quirk, so when I was running around with this card game and I was networking, so I was networking in VR, and I was saying, I've got a book, I've got a card game, and people were asking me about this card game, and I said, well, you make funny noises and stuff, and these cards stick to you. And they went, if you make that into a 2-player game, I'll buy it at Christmas. And I had so many people say that one sentence to me: if you've made that into a proper game, that would be so funny to buy at Christmas. I would play that at Christmas. You should bring that out and bring it out at Christmas, and I would buy it. And I was like, so many people are saying the same thing, saying it different ways, but they're saying the same thing. Bring it out at Christmas and you'll make a lot of money selling this game because it's a funny game. And so I was like, okay, so that's worth working on. So then I took that game to my sister and I said, I need to change this into a 2-player game and I need some help. And she sat there and she helped me go through it, and we made it into the Go Fish mechanics that are underlying in Quirk. But we added the adaptation to it that you make sounds and actions to win cards from other players, rather than saying, have you got a dog? No, you've got to start barking at someone. So and when we started testing it, my nan was in the room and we were like making all sorts of noises at each other, and she was sat in a high chair. She almost fell off crying with laughter. And I was like, well, if this is making her laugh and she's not even playing, and we were laughing at each other and making silly faces as well. So we were like, well, that really works. So now I will build a quick version of that. And I literally went out and I brought 10 copies. I quickly redesigned a game and I made 10 copies, and I went to board game events and I played it with people who'd never met me, who'd never met each other. And I then garnered the feedback from all of them, and I added and adjusted to the game based on their feedback as well.
Right.
And I also did in some of it a little bit blind testing, but watching, so observational testing. So where they play the game and I just watch what they're doing and how they interact with the cards. And then, for example, I had a card in there where you bleep your words. So it was to reenact when people swear on TV and they go beep, beep.
Yeah.
But I watched, and that's my favorite card. I loved that card. But when I watched people play it, they'd always go, I don't know how to do that one. They'd always put it to the back of the pack in their hand.
Oh.
And I'd go, oh, okay. And I was watching, so I just watched that happen. And I just went, so why didn't you play that one then? I just didn't know how to play it. So I was like, okay, I saw that you didn't play it. Nobody played it in the game. And game after game, nobody played that card. So I was like, I'm going to have to take it out, because if it doesn't translate easily to them, when I'm not in the room, that's going to be a hard sell. And someone's going to play it and go, I don't get how to play this game. So I removed the things that were fun for me because it wasn't fun for others. So that testing and then iteration, tested it, it didn't work. I took that card out. I tested it again with the still cards. Everybody loved them except from the people that couldn't defend against being stolen. I then had to add defense cards. So it was like those, like iteration after iteration. And I was saying this to a friend earlier, but it seems to be like the design work's the fun part, but the design work kind of, if I ever talk my story back, I always say the design happens between the testing, and it's always, the design is always being instructed by what happened in the last testing. So it almost seems like I was always out testing the game and very quickly making these adjustments and then testing again. So the development time was 10 months, but I always consider my development always being at board game events and showing people it, and less about the design of the product. But obviously that's important, but the design was directed by the audience that would buy it. And by the time I managed to buy 100 of them, and I actually went, guys, I've got the game, it's in my bag. They all ran out to the cash machines and brought a copy. So like that, it works, like that testing and the way that you build on those and listen to people and the right people who are the ones that are going to buy the stuff that you're going to make will then show you that in terms of giving you cash for what you've made.
Yeah, I really like that observational research, kind of like boots on the ground method that you do, like going to these events, seeing people play your game, see how they know the cards they like, the cards they don't use. I really like that. Regarding,
we do the same in video games as well. So when I was testing my video game, I was recording their sessions using OBS, and also watching how they were playing the game, because they play it differently to how I play it. And it's things like, when you're designing something, you're like, well, I know the puzzle there, I know how to solve that puzzle, I know I've hidden things there, and it's like in your head it's obvious because you're the one designing it.
Exactly.
But you don't have that first time player experience where that person's playing it and they're like, I don't know the controls, I don't know where anything's set up. So it's then translating like the way that you design into how user friendly is this, and how quickly can I get the player to fun. Because if your player's playing your game and they can't quickly get to fun, they're going to put the controller down and never pick the game up again. And the same thing with card games. Like literally someone turned around to me and said, if I don't understand your game in 3 minutes, I'm not playing it. So I'm just like, okay, so I've got to make the rules as simple as possible so you can pick up this game in 3 minutes and play it. And now we've got a video where you can learn how to play Quirk in 1 minute. So
That's perfect. That is perfect. Yeah. Yes, the design aspect is so important, right? Because you can have an idea, you can get some interest, and in your head it's like perfect. And then when you see it being played and used by other people, you're like, oh, okay, I have to improve this, I have to change that. Yeah, that feedback is so important.
yeah, and it's about not being precious about the ideas that you like. This is my ultimately amazing idea, and it's going to be the most, and it's going to make me so much. And it's like, no, it's not. Just listen to the people who are actually going to buy it. Because, like, truth be told, people say to me, "Who's your favorite person to play Quirk?" And how often do you play? And I'm like, I don't play my own game. And the reason I don't play my own game is because I'm too busy designing other games, first and foremost.
Exactly.
And the people around me don't play games, so. I mean, I will play my game, and when we do play it, I got it out at a party, like with people I didn't know, and this is all adults, right? And it's sort of a family kids game, and I got it out, and they're all like laughing, they're all really like belly laughing playing this game, and it's so simple and funny. And when I play it, I love it myself, but it's really funny because it's not something that I'd go, oh yeah, let's play Quirk, but other people will because it's their favorite game.
Exactly.
So I do really enjoy it. I do enjoy it when I play it, and there's so much like love and heart in that game that when I do play it, especially now I've developed Go Quirk, which is on all the platforms. When I play that, it's like there's so much going on in this game, and I get so into it, and I'm there playing and trying to win, and I'm changing the characters around because one of them's annoyed me. So I've decided to put a different character in its place so it doesn't annoy me in the next game. So yeah, there is like a lot of heart in those games.
Gotcha. And I know you have like the physical like copies there with you, right? Can you show it to us real quick?
Yeah, so I was going to say when you get to like testing and iterating, so obviously I started with cards and characters, showing that quite a lot. And the next version of it, this is Quirk Legends, this is the second version, but I had this white box. And also when I was making this game, so when I say like make something really quick, I don't think I went on that step too long. Make something, develop your minimum viable product fast and cheaply. Like, don't spend too much time developing something that's going to break the bank. Make something quick, then test it. So we tested this, and I tested this when it was in a sandwich bag, right? It was in a sandwich bag. There was no box, and then I had to design a box, and it's a white box. And everybody said to me when I went to like design shows and trade shows, all the little shops that came to talk to me to stock my game said, "Can't you make the box colourful? Can't you put like a character on it?" And I was like, oh yeah, I can. So when I went to reprint, we printed it with a coloured box. So this is the next iteration. And so there's like different customers that you come across. So our customers started with players, and those people brought directly from me, from my website, from Amazon. Then it was getting into shops, and then it's listening to, well, how can I help my shop sell this game better to the people that already love playing it? So the next step was make coloured packaging. We've even got like a hidden character here. And there's also I think it's hidden on the back of this box. We've got a little, I like the way you quirk it. It's a little, so if you've taken the box apart like a lot of kids did with this, you'd find all those hidden things on the packaging. And then Quirk Legends became a little purple box with a little dragon on there, and again there's a unicorn dancing, hiding on the packet, and underneath we've got so I forget about all these things. I do want to. We're all happy dragons here, which is on the bottom of that one. And then I made Quirk monsters. So the game like went on like because people asked for more characters. So I've got the Grim Reaper hiding, and underneath here it says back from the dead. So that's like all the monsters in the game. And then what we did when I had all three copies, so the original, then Legends, which is fantasy creatures, and then Monsters, which is all Halloween type creatures. I licensed it to Gibson's, and we made this version. And this version has got 2 decks in it. You've got the rules on top, but it's got, oh, I know, I've talked about now. We've got a white deck and we've got a grey deck. And the white deck are full of easy characters, which is the Quirk game, and the grey deck is more difficult creatures. So the Quirk Legends, so that's dragons, unicorns, things. So the grey deck's more of like imaginational creatures that you wouldn't know how to act out, but you might have a way of acting out in your own head, which is really interesting when you're playing it with other people. The white deck, which is the main quirk, was like cats, dogs, pirates, like things that you go, I know how they sound, I can act them out very quickly. So there's a different difficulty level within the cards, and you can mix them all up. And the best thing about Quirk is when you play it for the first time and you have no idea what characters are in the deck, and you never know what action or sound's going to come out somebody's mouth. So from that version, so that was out for about 2 years like this. And you see the box is falling apart a little bit. I've had it for a while.
Right.
So what we've now done, well, with Gibson, so this is the Gibson's copy, is we've got a new box, and it's a lot more solid. It's yeah,
that looks legit.
So you've got your cards in like this now. Same cards from the other box. We've just got a different box now, and the rules are in here like this. But yeah, that's the iteration of product development, and we did this like every print run. So once we sold out of a print run, we go, right, that's a great opportunity to change the way the game looks, to add new rules, so make it quicker. And especially with physical products, you don't have the luxury of what you do with like a game on Steam, where you could go, oh, I've got a patch for this, so I just upload the new version. With a card game, if you get anything wrong, you've printed 1,000 copies, you've got to sell 1,000 copies with that mistake in. And then once that's gone through, you go, right, let's fix that mistake, and in the next version, the mistakes won't be there. But I think also the charm with like mistakes in products, or like special things, or things that get taken out, like, and then in new versions, you've got like collector's editions. So I know a lot of people who, when I made through every iteration, my biggest fans would buy the next version, even though the game was completely the same. And they'd be like, I've got a shrine of Quirk games because you made different versions. Like some people have got the first 10, some people have got the first 100. Some of them have got all coloured boxes as well. They've got the Kickstarter edition boxes. So yeah, we made like so many tweaks, or I made so many tweaks along the way, to make my customers happy with every step.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I love seeing the iteration, the whole like evolution process from like a small plastic container to like the whole like legit box. Oh man, that evolution,
and then even to the point where I went from like small retailers like your local game shops to the game ended up being specifically for the UK. We were in Waterstones, John Lewis, we were in Toys R Us, we were in Waitrose, and Toy Masters across the UK, Welsh heritage sites. Yeah, it sort of exploded across the UK. And I made a little map about like all of the shops that had Quirk in stock when I was like 100% like doing it myself, and also then working with Gibson's.
right. That is awesome. How does it feel like having like going through step one, having your idea and then seeing this map with all these stores selling your product? Like how did you feel going to a store like, oh yeah, that's Quirk, I made that?
But do you know what? It wasn't even that. Like I'd go to John Lewis and I'd sit in John Lewis, like my game's on the shelf. But I'd get friends texting me with pictures of my game, and people like all across the UK going, I found Quirk in Scotland, or I found Quirk in Wales, or I found Quirk in this, and I've not been that far up like country in a while. So I'm like, there's no way I could have done that. But I did it through distribution. I did it through like working with partners in ways like that. So it was fantastic. And I'm even like talking about it now and thinking about that journey. I mean, I wrote a book called Immerse Yourself, How to Go It Alone, but I'd taken the book down because I wanted to go back and write some different things, because it's quite a personal journey as well. And I mean, everything that happened along my journey, I was pretty much like, oh my God, this thing has happened. And I can't believe the way some of the stuff panned out as things progress. And it's not just like me sat behind a computer building what I'm building. I ended up going to events and meeting like semi-celebrities and things, and then being connected to different publishers. I almost had a publisher before I even brought my game out after 10 months of development. So I was like on month 9 of development, and I had a licensing deal, and I turned it down because I turned around and said, I want to learn the whole production process and take this out to market on my own. And then in the first 2 years, sold 11,000 copies on my own and got into the stores and got a distribution partner. But yeah, it's incredible what you can do when you're like, you've got, and again, expectation goes for how do you want your players or customers to feel, but also expectation goals of, I want to build this product, how big do I think this can be? And then having and setting that goal in your sights, in your mind's eye, and going, I know this can be big, so I'm going to take all the little steps and see where it goes. And I do have like a really strange journey of meeting incredible people. All of these people helped me in some way, even to a point where I managed to get an article in a paper about my game being successful in Southampton, and then somebody's husband was reading the paper and went to their wife, you should work with this girl. And she went, no, I can't work with her. And then I ended up going to a show, and I got approached by this woman. She was like, look, I've seen you everywhere, and I think now's the time we should work together.
Whoa.
So we ended up working together because she'd seen me in so many places, or seen my game in so many places. And we worked together for a while, and she did a lot of marketing for me. She was fantastic. She got me into like 12 different magazines, like industry magazines. And then I was like totally overrun at a toy fair. One time I was like trying to have meetings with people, and people just running over to me going, oh my God, I've seen you in every magazine. And I had like literally people running, like people who would demonstrate my games for different companies. They would run off the stand and just say, I'm obsessed with this game. I've got every single one in my collection. And then telling me all the stories of how they were playing this game. And I'm like, that's really amazing. But, you know, you sit behind a computer and you do the stuff. You don't see it. You see, like, you're refreshing the pages, you're seeing the numbers,
Right.
people playing. I didn't get many refunds. I think, like, out of 11,000, they're in single digits, the refunds for the product. And it mainly were, like, defects in the product. So if it had been sent and got squished or something, and it got sent back to Amazon, and then I'd have to send it back to me and find this squished game of Quirk. But, yeah, it was really, really good. It was really positive. A lot of positive. There is a little bit of love-hate from people, especially in board games, with that game, because it is such a family-friendly game, and for some people it doesn't have enough of something in it for them, so they downrate it very quickly. So you get this kind of like Marmite love it or hate it type of vibe. Yeah. So, but it's an incredible journey, and there's so much stuff happened to me. And if I went into detail, we'd be here for 3 hours. So
Exactly. And especially you being a one-person army doing all these things. Yeah. The thing that caught my attention the most was definitely people having shrines of Quirk.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It is. It's amazing. And I forget about all this stuff because I'm now sat behind a computer developing another game. Like, who's going to like my game that I build now? You know, you kind of feel like I'm in this alone. But then when you go out to events and actually meet people, you get that inspiration back. And I think a lot of product development, especially for me, is driven by meeting people and seeing the expressions on their faces and listening to them and seeing how much joy they're getting from the games that I'm making. And it's quite surreal because you're just like, this is just something I knew it could be big, but I didn't realize like how much it impacted people.
Awesome, Emma. Perfect. Before we finish the episode, let's say people want to talk to you or collaborate with you, work with you. Where can people find you?
So I can be found, I'm on LinkedIn. If you search for MMA, it's quite a generic name, but it's linkedin.com/EMMAY89. You'll find me. So please connect, say hello. Also, you can find me at emmersestudios.com. So that's where we post about all our games. So you can find all our games on there. You can find Go Quirk, which is on iOS, Android, and Steam. I'm not sure it's in every country because of certain tax laws and things. So if you're in the US or basically English-speaking countries, you could probably get it. So I think US, Canada, UK, Australia, and New Zealand. On Steam, it's everywhere. So if you're everywhere in the world, you can find it on Steam. It's quite a cheap game, and I've just set some discounts for it for whenever the Steam sales are coming up. So just keep an eye on it and maybe wishlist it if you fancy giving it a go. So yeah, Go Quirk, and then you'll find Quirk within Go Quirk if you're downloading that. But Go Quirk can be found on Amazon or Gibson's website, gibsons.co.uk.
Awesome. Yeah. And guys, we're going to have all those links in the description. So if you're interested in like buying Quirk, talking to Emma, being part of these like Quirk universe, we're going to have the links below. Yeah. If you want to contact her, Emma was extremely kind, very.
And I was going to say, please join my Discord and come see the behind the scenes of the games that I'm building if you want to be a part of that as well. That'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll also have the link for Discord as well. She was very kind, very open to talk and to collaborate. So yeah, definitely an awesome opportunity there. Emma, thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been brilliant. Thank you.
All right.